back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, so I'm here today to review 2 science fiction books for you. The first one is a short story collection which is called Children of the New World, and this is by Alexander Weinstein. And the other one is a classic which is called The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin, and this was my first Ursula K. Le Guin. So I'm going to start with the short story collection. I actually read this as part of the Book Buddy-a-thon, which was a lot of fun. I read it with Mercedes as our buddy book. I didn't love this, and nor did she. We discussed it quite a lot as we went because we discussed each story as we went through. This book had the potential to be something really great. I thought it was going to be really good because it's pitched as a collection of stories all set in this new world where basically humanity has kind of gone terribly downhill and people are addicted to being online. They're addicted to basically having fun online and not leaving their houses and not doing anything for the world and essentially just making the world messed up, like really messed up. So the environment has gone absolutely to hell, everything is terrible outside of their houses, but they have this great connection to the internet and they can do things online and they have robots and all of this crazy stuff. So the interesting thing is this new world. The new world he created is something that is a potential future, so that was interesting. And there were a few stories within this that I thought were good. The biggest problem I had with this collection was that it felt very samey. Every story was narrated by a man, and it was always a sort of middle-aged man, and it was always the same sort of attitude that they had. Like, none of them felt like different people. They all could have been the same person, really. They're just in different situations. And I didn't really like that because I wanted to see other perspectives in this new world. I wanted to see a perspective from a robot or from a woman or from a child, and I didn't really get that. And I mostly just got the view of this one man who kind of changed name and place for each story. So that was a little bit annoying to me, but that would have been okay if the stories had been original enough to stand out on their own. I don't think they were. I think a lot of the stories in this blurred together. A lot of them had very similar themes and very similar setups, and because the characters were already very similar, it just didn't feel like they were original. And my other problem is, from reading like Clarkesworld and Uncanny, which are 2 SFF magazines where they have short fiction, some of the short fiction in those magazines is fantastic, like so good, and the things that authors can come up with and that they can get across in a short amount of pages and words is so incredible. And I just didn't feel like any of the stories in this really did anything groundbreaking, did anything new, did anything that I hadn't seen before or that excited me. A lot of it was kind of regurgitating ideas I'd heard of before. And I know I read science fiction and fantasy a lot, but Mercedes doesn't read it as much, and even she was saying, you know, I don't think a lot of these ideas are very fresh or very new or very exciting. A lot of them are just kind of theories that a lot of people have, and a lot of ideas are repeated, and it just didn't really grip me like I wanted it to, which was really disappointing because we both thought we were going to really like it, and unfortunately we just didn't. It wasn't a terrible book. I wouldn't say it's terrible. It was just okay. Like, nothing more than that for me. I gave it 2 stars in the end because unfortunately not one of the stories gripped me enough to be like, yeah, that's fantastic. They were all just, yeah, they're okay. They're okay. That one's okay. But I couldn't even now say to you that I really remember one of them in particular. I think there's like one that I could remember, and that was about a landscape that was all desolate and the soil was going wrong, and that was interesting. It was called Heartland. But the rest of them, they just didn't grip me. So yeah, sadly, not one I would recommend that much. I would say if you do want to read amazing science fiction and fantasy shorts, then check out Uncanny or check out Clarkesworld or one of those SFF magazines, because they were a lot better than this. Moving on to more positive things, this is the Ursula K. Le Guin, which is The Left Hand of Darkness. This is set in her Hainish cycle. I'm not entirely sure how the order of the Hainish cycle books goes, but you can start with this one. I started with this one. I'd never read any of her other books, and I'm so glad that I started with this one. I've heard from a lot of people that this is a great place to start, and I think it is. I think at first there's a little bit of confusion about what's going on, but you get into the story quite quickly. So we follow an envoy who is coming from this big kind of intergalactic federation essentially. A lot of the planets have united. There is a trade agreement between many different planets, and people can travel between planets in their lifetime quite easily. They go into like a sleep mode and stuff. So it definitely seems like this world or this universe has connected. But when we follow our story, this envoy is going to a new planet which is called Winter. No one really has ever been there before who comes from outside of that planet, but they have got an alien race who live there, and the alien race who live there are genderless most of the time. They don't have a gender. It's only when they need to procreate that they actually take on a gender, and it can be male or female, kind of just depends on the situation. Two people will go into this thing called chemering, and when they do, they come together, they make a baby, one of them gets pregnant, one of them doesn't, and that's what happens. So they can become a certain gender just for the purpose of making babies. They don't necessarily have like sexual relations. They find it very odd when they meet this envoy who is static and has one gender the whole time. He's a man. It's a really interesting look at this person from this very modern, very high-tech, very influential Federation type thing coming into the planet and meeting this very insular, war-strewn, trodden down, beaten down race, because they've had a lot of internal wars on their planet. There's different sort of tribes on their planet, and they're in a much earlier civilization than most people on Earth or whatever different planets there are at this time. So they haven't evolved as much as they could have because of the amount of war and tumult on their planet. Plus, the planet is called Winter because it is incredibly icy. There are large plains of ice that you can see on the front cover. I thought this was sand originally, but it is ice. So it's like a big sort of ice sheet, glaciers, things like that, and it's cold a lot of the time. So they can have like very horrible blizzards and stuff, and they find it really fascinating to talk to this person who comes from outer space about his life and his journeying and the planets he's been to and the places where they've got all this crazy technology. They don't really have the capacity to understand that he could have people on the planet in a few hours, because they don't even know if they trust that he comes from outer space. They think maybe he kind of is just one of them who's stuck in this gender or something. It's a really cool look at gender. It's a really cool look at a first contact story between this person from outer space and these new people on this planet. I really loved the discussions in this. There were lots of places that I tabbed because I thought that it was very beautifully written, and there were some absolutely stunning moments of writing, and I just think it's a really good book. Like, I don't love science fiction. I find it quite hard to kind of find what I like in science fiction. I'm still discovering it, and this is definitely what I like in science fiction. It was a little bit complicated at first, but once I got it easily, and it was fascinating once I connected with the characters, and I did connect with the characters. I thought that they were all really interesting, and I think that the way that they came across and the discussions they were having were very of the time now, even though it was written a fair while ago. I think it was written in the 70s or something like that. It was first published in 1969, so it's a fairly old book, but I think so many of the discussions within this are still incredibly relevant to today, and I think it just was fantastic. It was a fantastic read, and I really enjoyed it. So if you've never read an Ursula K. Le Guin and you want to, maybe start with this one. I've heard from a lot of people that they should start with the Earthsea Quartet, which is her fantasy series. I've also heard that that is not a good start point, and that it's quite childlike and it's quite boring. So I started with this one, which is an adult science fiction, but it's really entertaining, I think, and I would say probably start with this. From what I've heard from people, this sounds like a better start point. I have got the Earthsea Quartet by her. I do intend to read it, but I think this will be a book that more people would like from the sounds of it. So definitely interested in your thoughts if you've read this one, or if you've read this one. I believe this one's only out in America right now, but I'd be interested if you have read it, anyone over there. So let me know, leave me your comments, and definitely I'm very happy that I read this one, not so happy I read this one. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.